Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up next in our Business and Buzz segment, brought to you by Revere Securities, we are featuring our regular contributor and financial professional, Kyle Wool, currently serving as non-executive chairman at Revere Securities. And today we're joined by Candy Valentino, entrepreneur, author, named Top Business Leaders 40 Under 40, Top 10 Business Consultants by Yahoo Finance, and she was the youngest female to receive the Governor's Award in Entrepreneurship in Pennsylvania. She shares her gritty real-world business and investing strategies with an audience of millions through her founders organization. Today, we're chatting about ways to recession-proof your life, why the average millionaire has multiple streams of income, how self-education leads to higher income than higher education, how to give the IRS, according to Candy, the greatest destroyer of wealth, as little money as legally possible, and why she thinks real estate investing is the hat trick of building wealth. Here to chat how to come out winning in 2023 on WR's top trending financial literacy segment are my experts at hand, Kyle Wool and Candy Valentino. Welcome to the show, superstars.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Zen.
Candy, this is your wheelhouse. Leveraging almost 25 years of experience amassed from creating successful businesses in multiple industries, you mentor and speak on topics of wealth creation, business development, and real estate investing. Wealth Habits is your first book. Congratulations. You have a proven system for building wealth. And based on research, data, and the experience of your own life, you are known to show people how the think to get rich philosophy will only get you so far and that you have to do to become wealthy. Explain what that means and why you say self-education leads to higher income than higher education.
Well, first off, a lot of those things that you just said just shows my age. I've been doing this a really long time. I grew up in a trailer on government assistance and found a way to start a business, start investing, build wealth, and have true financial freedom. And so the reason that think and get rich will only get you so far is, yes, we of course need to address the thoughts in your mind and what you think about money, because everything that most people think right now about money, about finances, have either been caught or taught by someone else in their life. It's not really your own thought process unless you've done the work. But that's only going to get you so far. You need the tactics of actually how to get out of debt, because the system, society has created a system that we basically get a job, we go to college, we have all of this debt from college. We're trying to then just work to pay bills and constantly trade time for money. And all that's going to do is make you a slave to the system. Self-education is really about giving you the tools and the understanding of how to not live that life and how to really build wealth and create true financial freedom.
Oh, so well said, my dear. And very well quoted by your reps at PR Fortier. Wealth Habits, they said, reminds each of us that regardless of what family you came from, hence to your point, what level of education you have or what current financial life you look like, you too can make the financial freedom regardless of your circumstance. So I love that they said that. Kyle, Happy New Year and welcome back, my friend.
Happy New Year to you, Zen.
All right, let's chat passive income. So passive income, so for all of us to be clear, the passive income that we're talking about is passive income is unearned income that is acquired automatically with minimal labor to earn or maintain. And it's often combined with another source of income, such as a side job. And in the United States, the IRS divides income into three categories: active income, passive income, and portfolio income. Kyle, why does the average millionaire, in your opinion, have multiple streams of income, and why is passive income so important?
Well, I'll speak more to portfolio income because that's more my specialty. And I got a feeling Candy will talk more about real estate income, which by looking at her background, she knows quite a bit about. So when you look at portfolio income, you have to really break that down into a couple different categories. You have regular income, which you would get off of corporate bond or a high yield bond, which some people call junk bonds. And that'll be higher. It could be 5, 6, 7, 10% right now with current interest rates. Then you also have tax-free income, which you would get from a municipal bond. Now, that is very different depending on the state you live. If you live in a city like New York City and you make more than $400,000 as a family, your taxable rate will be over 50%, which is quite astonishing. Now, if you buy a triple tax-free bond in the state of New York, and you're making probably 5% on that right now, and again, there's different durations and things like that you have to take into consideration, that would be 100% tax-free. So a 5% triple tax-free bond would have a tax-adjusted yield of 10%. So these are the things you need to look at. And then also, there are dividend income. And again, depending on the state you live, dividend income currently is at 15%. But they don't really tell you if you live in the state and city of New York City, it's really 22.5%, but that's still a lot better than 50%. And then when you really dig into certain dividends, excuse me, there are dividends that are qualified dividends called qualified dividend income, QDI. So these are things you really need to look at. And it's not really what you make, Zen, it's what you retain. And taxation has a lot to do with what you retain. And that's why I know you and I have talked about in the past, people like Warren Buffett will for the most part, always outperform these hedge funds because of a lot of their gains are short-term capital gains that taxed at 50% compared to long-term capital gains taxed at 15%, really 22.5 in New York, but 15%. And these are how you make a real difference. You can make $1 million, but you may only retain $500,000, or you can make $1 million and maybe retain 900,000.
Yeah. Very well said. And now that you put it into perspective like that, even in a very complicated context that you broke it down, it's really just about education and informing yourself, or really using a wealth manager that can navigate, these very, very, difficult concepts for the average person to understand if they're doing it on their own. So thank you for breaking that down. Candy, let's chat save more this year in 2023, which everybody has on their list. Unsurprisingly, that's the top financial resolution is to save more money. And there are nearly countless ways to go about this. You can increase your 401k contributions. You can set up automatic transfers to a high yield savings account and cut back on unnecessary spending. You are quite savvy on saving and taxes via clever deductions. You say we should pay as little as possible in taxes, and I agree. But what steps should we take to ensure that we don't overpay? And I actually love how you pitch it on your website, how to give the IRS, the greatest destroyer of wealth, as little money as legally possible. Talk to me about this.
So, personal finance in business is really simple. You either make more or you spend less. That's it. You want to increase your net worth, you either make more or have more assets that make you more money, or you spend less or have less expenses. So when we really strip all of the tax basis down, you're going to pay the most amount of tax on your earned income. Anything that you're going, your W-2, your 1099, anything that you're trading time for money. What Kyle spoke to was portfolio income, which is of course lower, and so is passive, which is mainly on real estate. So, and it also opens you up. The reason I love personally real estate is it allows the little guy in to accumulate more assets more quickly. And a lot of times people think, oh, well, in order to buy real estate, you need a lot of money. But I can buy $1 million. I can take $1 million of my own money and buy 4, 5, maybe even 10, depending on the deal, $1 million in real estate assets. But if I want to buy $1 million in stocks, I typically need $1 million to buy that same $1 million in stocks. So it's a way to exponentially grow your net worth as you want to continue to build assets. And it opens you up to having a business so that you can have the business deductions. When I did the research for Wealth Habits and researched the Forbes 400, the richest people in Forbes 400, 75% of them all had one thing in common. They either owned a business or their wealth was from their family owning a business. 3/4 of the Forbes 400. So it just goes to show that business ownership, which is something that's available to anyone, regardless of where you came from, what family you were in, your circumstances right now, it's something that you can set up in a weekend, start earning more money, and then taking that earned money and starting to invest it either in portfolio or passive investments. Because otherwise, what's going to happen is if people don't do these things, they're going to end up trying to retire on Social Security benefits in their 401k. But that's not going to give you the lifestyle that you have right now. So the faster that you can take earned income and put it into assets and really flip the script of not spending your earned money, but investing your earned money and then spending the dividends from those assets, that's how you compound truly interest over time, but also wealth more quickly.
I love it. You are awesome. I was gonna ask you, but I'll go back to you in a minute. Tax strategies that sound illegal, but I'll go back to Kyle right now because I want to get his POV on something. So, Kyle, you've been in the business for well over 2.5 decades as a wealth manager and a licensed financial expert. You've seen it all. In your point of view, what's the main factor keeping Americans broke and in debt?
Well, I think the word debt is the main factor. I think people carry much more debt than they should carry. And I think people don't really have true vision of where interest rates are and where they're going. So let's say, oh, it's cheaper to do a 7-year ARM. Why would I not do that? Because you know what? If interest rates are at 0 2 years ago, the probability of them going higher is quite high. So to take on this lower interest payment now, which is something that can be devastating for you when those get readjust. I know many people that had 5, 7, 9-year ARMs that are really feeling the pain right now that they have to adjust those adjustable rate mortgages. Or people that, well, you know what, my house appreciated, it's going to appreciate forever, just like 2007. And they take these large HELOCs out. And that was great when interest rates were at 0. But now those HELOCs are probably charging you 6, 7, 8, 9%. And that can be very painful. Or people that also have a lot of credit card debt. All of these are floating rate interest. So whether it's a HELOC, whether it's a loan against your portfolio, what a lot of people do, whether it's your credit card, that debt, if you have more debt than you can service, it's a way to bankruptcy.
It's very true. And I think, looking at the overall picture, when you look at your bank account and really being realistic about what you are informed on and not informed on, and where where there's room for growth and improvement. I think also a lot of Americans just live off credit card debt, and they don't really understand, generational wealth, or how to optimize, living off of their even what their bank account can yield. Because for most Americans, they're not at the place where they can save. Look at the society that we live in right now. Look at what's happening in the world. Very few people are at a good financial place. Maybe the top 20% of people that we know are living very comfortably right now. Candy, you claim, we talked about this, that real estate investing is the hat trick of building wealth, which I agree. Talk to me a little bit more about this notion, and what are some simple tips for creating wealth during high inflation and recession fear?
Well, so, there's only a few ways, like we had said, that you can really even recession proof your life. There's a lot of things that you need to be doing when times are good to set yourself up when times are bad, because there's always going to be winter. And I think the most important thing is for anyone that's listening right now that thinks, oh my gosh, I don't even know what they're talking about, or I have to develop my financial acumen, or yes, I do have credit card debt, is to first remember that you're not alone. We are not taught this stuff. So unless you've done a deep dive, which it doesn't happen to most people until they're in their 40s, of really trying to figure this out, it's totally understandable that you've also become a slave to the game and you're just working to pay bills. So first off, you've got to drop the shame and the guilt, because that'll trip people up where then they have massive anxiety around their finances. In order for you to get a different result, we have to change the behavior of how you view money and literally flip everything that you've been taught upside down so that you can view it completely different. And to Kyle's point, I think that that's really important so that people understand how they actually make money, how they build wealth. And the thing is, right now in recessions or economic downturns or market volatility, I think it's important to remember that if you just change that word to opportunity, it'll create a totally different feeling in your body. And that's really what happens for a lot of people, is when we have market pullback, it allows people to get in for a less stock price, for a cheaper price. And it also gives people, for real estate, an opportunity to get in. When prices were pushed up so high during, mid 20 to mid 2021, it was really tough to be able to be competitive. You had to have cash. You had to go in with no inspections. Now that the market is starting to settle, you're going to see some market volatility in the houses that are below median. So any house that's probably below that 350, 375, depending on the state that you're in, we're going to see some foreclosures coming, because the government printed mass amounts of cash, puts in everybody's pocket, made them feel richer than they were. They took mortgages out, like Kyle said, that they couldn't afford. And now all of a sudden, they're going to start to feel upside down, and the government's not printing as much money as they were. So that's going to get opportunity for the real estate investor to come in. It's also going to give you opportunity to get stocks at a discount. When you take a look at stocks that necessarily aren't going to go away, but are just challenged right now, like maybe there's still some airline stocks or some cruise stocks or things that we haven't quite pulled out of. Another thing, green energies and utilities are always great. Looking at recession-proof businesses that have a very simple business model and need minimal innovation, things like laundromats, trailer parks, RV parks. When people don't have cash to go buy new, what are they doing? They're repairing things. So home repair services, car repair services, those are all things that we could be doing now to set ourselves up. But like what you were saying with debt, I mean, that is the one thing. You cannot out invest bad debt. So the very first step is to get rid of that. And how do you do that? It's by either increasing what you have, money coming in, or it's decreasing the spending. And the number one litmus test for that is if anyone listening is like, oh, you know what? I don't even know if I'm overspending or not. If you can't take 20% of what you're making right now between your earned income, passive portfolio, if you can't take 20% of that first and invest it into real assets, you're overspending.
There you go. Well, we are out of time, but stay put because we have a couple more questions in our extended segment coming right back up for Kyle. But thank you so much for a very, very interesting answer, because you just answered 6 questions in a row, and that was fantastic because you do what you do best for a reason. Guys, we are out of time. You definitely have to check out Kyle Wool and head to candyvalentino.com. That was our business and buzz segment brought to you by Revere Securities. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Revere Securities. Revere is committed to building a relationship of trust in which they work closely with you to help you define your objectives, explore alternatives, and choose the financial and investment strategies that are most appropriate for you. Go to reveresecurities.com.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Welcoming back to our business and buzz segment brought to you by Revere Securities is our regular contributor, Kyle Wool, non-executive chairman at Revere Securities, joined by the amazing Candy Valentino. Welcome back, my dear friends.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. All right. So, Kyle, I'm going to start with you. According to Candy's book, Wealth Habits, practicing gratitude, Kyle, creates wealth in surprising ways. What has your experience been? I know that you and your wife, Sue, are very, very much gracious and pay it forward. Why is this so important, Kyle?
It's very important. I mean, when you make money in this world and to be able to give it back and to see what it does for people, I think it's very important. I think that's another thing, going back to what Candy talked about with the tax code as well. Not only is it rewarding for you personally, but it also can be very rewarding for your portfolio and the way that you look at your income. Because right now, if you make X amount of money and it's regular income, forget about dividend income and passive income, you're going to pay taxes on that from 35 to 50% if you're in the top tax earning bracket. But if you are involved in a charity, and I sit on the board of probably 5 different philanthropic charities, and you get involved, you get your hands into it, you participate, you see where the money goes, and you make donations to that, that will lower your taxable income. That is another way to lower your taxable income. And not to take it off of this topic, which I think is important, but back to, I think, the thesis of what we're talking about today is how do you lower that taxable income, right? There's many ways. I would say the first and easiest way to do it is to max out your 401k. If you can max out your 401k, that directly comes off your taxable income. I think there's many different things. If you're self-employed, you can set up cash plus accounts. You can have a SEP IRA. Any of these facilities that the U.S. government gives you, you should take full advantage of them. Because if you can drop that taxable income, you might go down a bracket, number one, which can save you a lot of money. But number two, every penny that you put into these structures that are afforded to you by the U.S. government will drop your taxable income. I think that's a very important way to save money.
Yeah, so well said. And now this brings it back. I'll bounce it to you, Candy. Talk to me about some of these tax strategies, but more importantly, let's go back to financial freedom, especially important for women. I want you to touch a little bit on that. And how has practicing gratitude created wealth for you?
So I think that, there's just this universal law that if you're not appreciative of what you have, you're not going to get more of it. And if you don't know how to manage $5,000, I just don't think that $500,000 is going to come to you easily. So I think that it's really about knowing what you have and remembering every single day that you wake up. I did research in the book that more than half of the world lives on $10 a day. So if you're listening to this in your car, if you're watching it on your iPhone, however you're doing, you are doing better than 50%. And oftentimes we get so stuck in our own little problems and we forget that it's not really a real problem. There isn't necessarily a bear chasing us. It's a psychological thing that we had, that we didn't hit the first quarter goals, or, oh, I didn't pay off as much debt as I had hoped this year. And what that does is it puts you in a perpetual motion of always having lack. So being grateful is not just about some woo-woo thing. It's a legitimate thing that I think if people are just focused on creating money and having money, they're really going to miss the point of building a rich life. And having a rich life is about contributing beyond yourself, not just about what we can acquire and take, but what we can give and who we can serve. So I think that that's why gratitude plays a really big part in wealth and in financial freedom. And I'll just speak to you. You'd mentioned about women. I think that from a female's perspective, we are not that far removed generationally from a time when our number one goal was to find a guy that was successful and that wouldn't beat you and that you wouldn't be married and have a bunch of kids, right? I mean, we're not that many generations removed. When I was in the late 90s wanting to start a business, it was absurd that some 19-year-old female would want to start a business. And, it was still a very much a man's world. My mom said to me, do you want to be a teacher or a nurse? And was appalled when I said I wanted to start a business. So I think it's really important for women to understand that it's not just because you don't understand finances doesn't mean that you shouldn't. It's taking the time to really learn about it, understand how to make money so that you're never put in a position where you have to depend on someone for your financial freedom or just to be able to live. And I think that's what's really important for women.
Amen. Welcome to 2023. Well said. Kyle, do you want to give some closing thoughts? We're almost out of time.
I think it's very important what Candy just said, because I had a very strong mother who was a president of the Social Workers Union. My sister is a surgeon, and 51% of this population is female, right? And I hate to say this, and I grew up in a family that did not have to go through this, but more than 50% of marriages also go through divorce. So I think the woman's place in the financial markets is very important. And I think they should really take it upon themselves, like people like Candy have done. And I applaud her for teaching others what she's learned, but you have to take it upon yourself to know your finances. And I always say it goes intake to expenditures, whether it's your body weight, whether it's your finances, it's the same thing. If you make all the money in the world and you spend it all, you're going to have nothing. If you run the marathon and you eat 5,000 calories a day, probably not going to lose weight. It's just all basic math, right? So I think it's very important for each individual, whether man or woman. I'll probably give women a little bit of a nod here over men. I find men, just in my 20 plus years of investing, to be a little bit more of risk takers. And I think women are a little bit more prudent when it comes to their portfolio. So, maybe that's part of because of Candy and the women that came before her. But I do think it's important for people to educate themselves and continue to educate themselves.
Oh, very, very well said. Thank you, Kyle. And you are a big supporter of women. I know that you are our number one fan here, and we thank you so much for being one of our most important contributors, because these financial literacy segments that we do together are probably one of the more popular segments on the show. And we cover everything: film, fashion, pop culture, cryptocurrency, cannabis, from the millennial mom's perspective. Yet I have more people emailing me. I want to say 200 plus emails a week in my personal inbox about, we love the financial literacy segments that you do with Kyle because it breaks it down. And of course, we've been adding more women to our roster. So I just want to thank you, Candy, for coming on and making the segment extra sweet. And Kyle, thank you so much for always being as charming as you can.
Lisa. Thanks, Candy.
Thanks so much for having me.
Guys, listen, you definitely have to check out Kyle Will and head to candyvalentino.com. That was our business and buzz segment brought to you by Revere Securities. And remember, the Federal Reserve is continuing to raise its benchmark interest rate. That means rates for mortgages, personal loans, credit cards, and savings accounts are all likely to continue to increase. And although there are signs that the pace of the increase in rates may be slowing, the Fed hasn't signaled it's going to stop with the rate hikes anytime soon. Remember, with rate hikes, saving becomes more appealing, and paying off your debt is even more important. Good luck in 2023. This is going to be your year. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.